Good afternoon and welcome. Hopefully, we've got a whole bunch of folks joining us on the Facebook feed today. My name is Chris Crocker from More News Now, and normally, and for many years, I have had the great honor of being the MC for the annual Women Helping Women Luncheon. But because of these unprecedented times, we're doing things a little bit differently this year, and I think this is going to be a great way to proceed. And I'm just so pleased that we're not canceling like so many things have had to do, because the mission of Women Helping Women Fund, I believe, is going to be critical, so much more important in the coming months and years as we begin to recover from this. The women and children, the vulnerable women and children that we serve are going to need our help more than ever. And today I am joined by Women Helping Women Fund President Christy Gravel and Executive Director Heather Hamlin. And today we are going to learn about the current landscape, the ever-evolving landscape of women and children in Spokane, and band together at a moment where we must be apart. We'll also have the opportunity, and I'm so excited about this, to hear from New York Times bestselling author Stephanie Land. Here is her amazing book. If you have not read it yet, must read this book. It's her debut memoir. It's called Maid, Hard Work, Low Pay, and a Mother's Will to Survive. And it recounts her harrowing saga as a single mother navigating the poverty trap. Her message of hard work and low pay could not be more timely in today's environment. And I think Stephanie, who is joining us from Missoula, her message is going to be something you're going to be hearing a lot of in the coming. I think you're going to see a lot of Stephanie, because what she speaks to is going to become an even more critical mission in this community and in this country in the coming months and years. Now to tell us a little bit more about the mission of the Women Helping Women Fund, it is my pleasure to introduce Board President Christy Gravel. Christy?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you everyone for joining us today for the live stream event. It's exciting times, as Chris was saying, and so happy you could be here with us. First of all, on behalf of the Women Helping Women Fund Board of Directors, I'd like to thank our corporate sponsors who continue to support us as we pivoted to this virtual fundraiser. We're so grateful for our longtime partners, Providence Healthcare and Numerica Credit Union, as well as our Giving Circle members, our corporate donors, and various individuals who continue to join us together to make a difference for the most vulnerable in our community, women and children in need. Personally, I've always had a passion for helping others and empowering women to reach their full potential. Wherever I've lived, I find an organization that I can pour my heart into, and in Spokane, that was Women Helping Women Fund. I attended my first luncheon in 2008 after moving back to the area, and from that point on, I was hooked. I was very impressed with the reach of this organization, offering financial assistance to many organizations and programs that provide a helping hand to so many women and children from a variety of backgrounds and with a wide range of needs, including increasing their education or advancing their education and working toward achieving financial stability. Our support means so much to enable these programs to thrive and make an impact in the community. And after 10 plus years of volunteering and supporting this organization, I'm honored to serve as board president alongside 18 other amazing women on the board. I really wish we could be together today. I've always enjoyed the luncheon. You walk away inspired, and I hope that we will do that for you today. But for 28 years, we gathered to share a meal, enjoy each other's company, pool our resources, and be a part of a solution. Be something bigger than ourselves. The power of the collective is huge, and our board of directors knew that we needed to find a way to continue our annual financial support in the midst of this social distancing environment. So in April, we worked to launch the Women Helping Women Resiliency Campaign. It's a mouthful, so sorry about my stumbles there. And together we've raised just over $100,000 to date, which is amazing. And following the tradition of our annual luncheon, 100% of these proceeds will benefit nonprofit organizations in Spokane County. So our fundraising goal is $300,000, and the campaign runs till the end of May. So I hope that you'll consider helping us reach this goal and donate what you can. So far, we've selected 11 incredible grantees for this year's allocation, and your continued generosity could make it possible to expand that list. To these recipients and all nonprofits in Spokane, thank you for the work that you do. We are truly honored to work together to support these nonprofits, and they represent a broad group tackling wide, diverse range of issues prevalent in our community. Well, thank you so much for allowing me a few minutes of your day to introduce myself and highlight our intentions for this campaign. Now I'd like to turn it over to our Executive Director, Heather Hamlin, who will share an update about the collaborative landmark report we released last year, The State of Women and Children in Spokane County. Heather?
Perfect, thank you, Christy. Hello, thank you for joining us today, everybody. We sure miss you at the luncheon. The convention center, I'm sure, is very empty, and we hope that we can see everybody for the luncheon next year. So I wanted to talk a little bit in part of an organization that's connected to so much meaningful data. Women Helping Women Fund released a landmark collaborative report on the state of women and children in Spokane County. This report leverages that data to update this community, our community, on issues that are important and impacting women and children. So the data of this report, it really tells a story of intergenerational poverty and adversity, and it leads to a dark forecast of future for some unless their circumstances change. So as you can imagine, COVID-19 and the current economy has made life even more difficult for so many of our neighbors, our family members, and our friends. The federal poverty level for a family of 4 is about $26,000. Could you imagine a family of 4, $26,000? Many public agencies and policymakers, they acknowledge that this underestimates the number of struggling American families. United Way, Alice, they have an Alice project, which is pretty fascinating. And the Alice project is a new way of defining and understanding the struggles of households that earn above the federal poverty level, but not enough to afford a bare bones household budget. So based on those calculations, it indicates that a family of 4 would actually need to make closer to $60,000 annually just to meet basic needs. For far too many families, the cost of living, it outpaces what they earn. And these are the families that struggle to manage even their most basic needs, like housing, food, transportation, childcare, healthcare, and the ever important necessary technology. So when funds run short, these cash-strapped households, they're forced to make really impossible choices. So they can decide between quality childcare or paying the rent, filling a prescription, or maybe fixing their car. And these short-term decisions have really long-term consequences. One of the biggest issues we're facing right now is childcare. So prior to COVID, there was a huge gap in childcare slots locally. Childcare businesses are closing at an alarming rate under the strain of this pandemic. And across the county, nearly 100 programs are closed, and those numbers will continue to grow. So many childcare sites, they may not reopen when people go back to work, and then there's going to be an even bigger shortage of childcare. This hurts families and it hurts our economy. The report and the data in here, this is not the end. This is only the beginning. The project is bounded by optimism, and we will continue to update the indicators annually on the areas that we know we can make a difference. So right now, friends, this is your opportunity to make a difference in someone's life. Let's be the ones who act. Let's be the ones who raise up other women, who provide a support system and a network of champions. Let's do something to change someone's life. You joining us today is an incredible, incredible start. Now I would like to ask that you please consider going further. If you feel so moved, make a donation to the Women Helping Women Resiliency Campaign today. The link is in the comments. It's also all over our social pages. Every dollar raised will go right back into the community through nonprofit grants and scholarships. You know, there's so much silence and shame for those needing help, and breaking that silence is a powerful thing. I'm going to share with you a quick story about my own childhood, the strength it took for my family to ask for help, and programs that changed the course of my life. Bear with me. I don't tell this story often. So some people have magical childhoods, and the memories are shiny and exciting, and mine was a little different. I like to think that my story began the day that my mom was blindfolded and we were driven to a confidential domestic violence shelter. I still remember the feeling of being in a safe home for the first time. The sense of community in that shelter and the next one was overwhelming. We were all in it together. Those mothers had deliberately chosen a new path for their children. The years weren't always easy. We persevered through homelessness and poverty before finding our footing again in a new state closer to family. Without the help of programs and resources along the way, my life would look incredibly different than it does today. And now it's my mission to give back and encourage others to do the same. Since our beginning 28 years ago, your donations to Women Helping Women Fund have made a very, very big difference in our community. It is impossible to count every child whose life has been improved, every woman who has been helped or supported, and every individual whose life has been saved by your gifts. My story is not all that unique. As you listen to Stephanie Land today, you'll see how community support can be transformational. Thank you for your continued support of Women Helping Women Fund, and we so look forward to having a great conversation with Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you for sharing your story. I wish I did not know that, and I wish I had known that was coming up. Bless your heart. And boy, the passion that you bring to your job at Women Helping Women Fund, I understand that even more now. Thank you for paying it forward. Thank you. Well, I am now delighted to tell you a little bit about today's guest, Stephanie Land. I think you will hang on her every word, as we have, not only in the book, but today. At only 28 years old, Stephanie's dream of attending college and becoming a writer was deferred when a summer fling turned into an unplanned pregnancy. And after facing domestic abuse and lacking any form of reliable safety net, she checked into a homeless shelter with her 7-month-old daughter. She began the bureaucratic nightmare, which I did not understand the depths of until I read her book, of applying for food stamps, subsidized housing, and she starts cleaning houses for $9 an hour. Stephanie illustrates the trauma of grasping for stability in a system that is rigged. And she demonstrates how even hard work doesn't even begin to pay off. In a constant state of scarcity, a single unexpected cost, a car repair, for example, medical bills, jeopardizes Stephanie's carefully calculated budget and shows the impossible slipperiness of escaping poverty. After years of barely scraping by, Land miraculously graduates with a bachelor's degree in English from the University of Montana in 2014 and started a career as a freelance writer. She writes about economic and social justice, domestic abuse, chronic illness, and motherhood, and has been published in the New York Times, the Washington Post, and many other outlets. Welcome from Missoula, Stephanie Land. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is quite a treat.
The pleasure is ours. This is such a tremendous book. And for those that have not read it, if you could just take us back in Port Townsend, Washington, to a time when you found out you were pregnant with your daughter unexpectedly, and how your idea of motherhood differed from the reality that you faced after she was born.
Yeah, I think the first thing I thought was, I guess nobody goes into a relationship expecting things to turn out really bad, you know? And so I really didn't see that happening. The emotional abuse and the years of traumatic things happening revolving around that. I just kind of thought, like my parents did. My parents got pregnant with me when they were 19. And my dad at the time, I was talking to him on the phone when I found out I was pregnant, and he said, you know, your mom and I, we weren't expecting you, and we turned out okay. You turned out okay. Like, you'll be fine. And so I went into it a bit naively in that sense. The thing that I really was not expecting, and the thing that I struggle with still on an almost daily basis is the lack of grandparents in my children's lives. Because I have another daughter, she's almost 6, Coraline, and she has never met any of my family members. And I've been mostly or completely estranged from most of my family for 6 to 8 years, some 9 years, I think. And so I wanted that so much for my kids when they were little. I wanted to them to go to grandma's house like I had when I was a kid. And I wanted them to have those really close, impactful relationships with older adults that kids really need. And so when Mia was younger, I tried to set up play dates for her that were with friends of mine who, like, one had grown up with a single mom, another was a single mom, who would just kind of understand a little bit of what she was going through, and to be a constant person in her life that she could depend on, and she could go to talk to things that she couldn't talk to me about. And so I've tried to keep that going. But there's still a notable absence that doesn't really go away.
Makes sense. It is hard. I have to think that your daughters see the boundaries that you've set, the reason for them, and you should be proud of that, and really showing that to your daughters. So kudos to you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Yeah. Great. Stephanie, you write a lot in your book about the shame that comes from needing help, and, with hard work and still, not being able to provide for your daughter the way that you wanted to. How does it feel now to be in the public face of this experience and talking about it so openly like you do?
It's a huge difference to write a book very much alone at your house, and then suddenly go on book tour and be a very visible face. And not only was I suddenly visible, I was looking out at the crowd of faces who were about to ask me very, very personal questions. And at first, I think I was really still in the habit of constantly defending my actions and my decision making. People asked me a lot, and I grew more and more mad about this question, but I kept answering it and trying to explain it, because I kept getting the question, why didn't you have an abortion? And I tried to give this long explanation for that, and eventually I said, that because that's what I chose to do, and my daughter's great, and how dare you ask that? And so I think I grew a lot in not only my own empowerment over that time in my life and the decisions that I made, but I also grew in just seeing hopefully the possible opportunities that I was giving to others to tell their story. And I try to advocate as much as possible for marginalized folks, and especially marginalized writers. I hand out my business card a lot at events and tell writers to contact me, and I'll help them out, because I think we need to listen to stories like mine, but I'm a very white, privileged version of that story, and we need to start listening to people who aren't privileged as much as I am, and have not had the opportunities, and who are Black and brown, and who are still angry, and who are still in the thick of poverty. We tend to listen to people who are beyond their worst moments. And I hope what comes out of the pandemic most of all is that we start listening to people who are struggling as they are going through it and have empathy for them in that moment.
I really appreciate the courage that it takes to do what you do and sharing, you know, the story about the abortion question, because I think it's so important. We all have our demons and people who are willing to share that story. And I think this is also really cool that this is on Facebook Live and it's free and everybody can see it and participate in it. And that's where it's like it's like the teachers who, if I can just touch one student, and when that story gets out and there's a venue for it to be shared, you change the lives of a lot of people by just offering hope. And so I, you know, want to give you kudos for that, because I think it's super important. And Heather, you too. It's when people hear your story, it changes lives, and it's great that you're willing to do that.
You know, Stephanie, I have a question for you, and it's pretty broad. How's that? How can we as society, as individuals, help to really kind of bridge that gap so people can navigate the journey out of poverty? We're not looking to you for answers, but like, what do you think we could be doing differently as a society?
Well, as a society, I think first we just need to recognize there is no real path out of poverty. There's a huge welfare cliff that people need to jump off of. I think a single mom pre-pandemic, she would have to go from making $10 an hour and receiving benefits, and then to get off of benefits, her income would have to jump to at least $33 an hour to cover all of her living expenses and raising her kids. So that is impossible. I mean, we're still fighting for $15 an hour as minimum wage. And so as a society, I think we can start advocating to change a lot of the structures that we have set up in the government assistance programs that are supposed to be safety nets, but they're usually not. I advocate heavily for abolishing work requirements. I don't think people should have to work or prove that they're working 20 hours a week in order to receive what comes out to be a little bit over $1 a meal per person per day. And you know, we need to get over ourselves and start the universal basic income and give cash to people who need it. You know, the whole universal child care, universal health insurance. There are so many things that we could do in the voting booths, especially as a society. And just any programs like the ones that you guys have going on in your communities. I mean, these people and groups do a lot to make up for where government assistance programs are failing. As individuals, I've been seeing a lot of GoFundMe type of things going on. My friend Jen Pasteloff, she's doing something where she's giving out $100 grocery cards to people who contact her needing food because they can't afford food to eat right now. And she's like raised like $100,000. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, that is so awesome, not only because people are giving that money, they're giving it without expectation. Like, that is cash for someone to use at a grocery store. And for me, I always felt like any amount of government assistance that I received, it was met with regulations and, you know, I could buy this, but I could not buy this. I couldn't buy feminine hygiene products. I couldn't buy diapers. I couldn't buy anything as far as like shampoo that I really needed. And it's because I think, you know, we'll see a person on the street asking for money and we hesitate to give them some because we have this narrative in our heads of what they're going to use that money for. And so I like to think of it as, you know, if my friend asks me for $10 I just give them $10 and I don't ask for a ledger or a receipt or, you know, like, well, how are you going to spend this money? It's like, yeah, sure, here's $10. And I don't expect them to pay me back. I don't expect them to only use it on, you know, morally good or acceptable things. And we should feel the same about not only giving to organizations, but, you know, how we operate in the voting booths or how we vote, and really how we give to any program or organization.
And you, to that end, not only through your writing, but you are sending your book to lawmakers in Washington to help get that point across, right?
Yeah, I'm actually sitting next to a whole bunch. Can I show you guys?
Yeah.
This one's going to Rand Paul. So, but yeah, it's called Maid to Reps, and you can go onto my website and at stepville.com. And we still have about 40 or 50 books left to package up. And so what we do is, inside this is a printed out personalized story of a person who filled out their story in an online form on my website. You can do this for free. We have a celebrity who donated 100 books for this, so we have a free option, or you can pay $15 and that goes all towards sending these, because it actually costs quite a lot of money. So, but yeah, these will hopefully get to, we covered at least every member of the Senate, and I think 40 plus representatives as well. And a lot of people are getting multiple copies, which I also quite enjoy. So.
Well, that is exciting. And if they didn't know your name before, they may after this, because your memoir has caught the attention of producer John Wells and Margot Robbie, and they're working on a Netflix adaptation of your story. What's the latest on that?
I did check in with them recently, and they're still working as if they will start production soonish. I don't know. There's no way of knowing when that actually might happen. But it's been great. I mean, it's terrifying to hand over your story, but not only like a story that very, very much involves your kid, to be represented in a visual sense. I mean, there's so many things that you can do wrong with perpetuating stigmas with poverty. And John Wells does a fantastic job with Shameless. And he also grew up with not a lot. So he knows, you know, what kind of cereal to put on top of the fridge, and just the little tiny things like that. And when I first spoke to them, they talked a lot about fictionalizing the story, and like, oh, we can add in like, you know, the social worker that you talk to in her home life, and, you know, the migrant workers next to you in the grocery store line, and we can go home with them. And I was like, wow, that's fantastic. Like, I guess I don't think fictionally. But what their plan is, and it's been picked up for one season, so that's happening, but the season 1 will start and end with my story, which I also enjoy, because I wasn't too excited about watching myself for, you know, however many seasons it went on. Just like, oh God, it's me again. But they're gonna, so every season will start over with a new house cleaner. And, you know, like then season 2 could start with an undocumented maid, and then, but in the majority, people of color. So, which I absolutely love. I like to joke that my memoir is memoir as a generalized form is pretty limiting, because I can only write my story and my experience. And I was not only living in a pretty white area, I was isolated, didn't go out much. And I joke that the book is like literally white, because the cover is white. And, And so I have really longed for my story to open a lot of doors for people of color's experiences. So yeah, a long answer, but I'm very, very smitten with what John Wells and Margot Robbie and the head writer, Molly Smith Metzler, are all doing.
Well, we can't wait for that. Can't wait.
I had a quick question for you, and I'm curious. You talk about the struggles of proving you were poor in your book. So what are some of the ways that you manage that?
Wow, I actually kept the folder. I carried around a purple folder that was full of like I used to make copies of every paycheck that I received from all of my house cleaning clients, 3 weeks of pay stubs, or 3 months of pay stubs if I had them, my most recent utility bill, any bill that I got in the mail went in that folder, because it seemed like, I mean, I'm not sure if they still do it in the same way, but back then, if you applied for food stamps, you would have to recertify every 6 months. And then say 3 months later, you applied for childcare assistance and you would recertify every 6 months after that. So every like 3 months or so, I was having to resubmit all the paperwork. And especially as I got into college, it got harder and harder because I didn't have a pay stub. I only had my house cleaning clients because I wasn't working through a company. So I was constantly trying to prove that I didn't have money. And that was so odd to me. But it's I think people assume, I guess, that people in poverty are somehow squirreling away money somewhere and trying to take advantage of the system. Because I mean, you're not even allowed more than $3,000 in assets in most states. So I had to prove that I didn't drive a nice car, you know. So yeah, I guess things like that. I constantly carried around paperwork.
Stephanie, how did you keep your motivation going through this? I know you got very ill when your daughter was, it was exhausting just hearing about your daily struggles.
I just had to. I mean, because if I didn't keep going, then where would we go? You know, I had this experience of starting out in a homeless shelter and with absolutely nothing. And I didn't want to go back to that place. I mean, I wanted my own house, even if it was a 300 square foot studio apartment, you know, it was still ours. And I had to keep moving forward, or I guess we would go backwards very violently. And that was scary. So, I mean, I guess I could say too, you know, I had this tiny little person constantly dancing around me in plastic tap shoes that I had to take care of. And, but that really, I don't know, that wasn't like all of it. It was just wanting to give her the life that I knew that she deserved.
And what was that like, living with baby Mia in a homeless shelter?
It's probably not what you imagine. The homeless shelter, well, I'm assuming that, sorry. The homeless shelter in Fort Townsend was a line of these little tiny cabins, and they were supposed to fit 2 families, but we got one all to ourselves the entire time. So it was like our own little house next to, I think there's a row of 5 or 6 of them. So it was nice in that sense, you know. It wasn't, I don't know, a room full of bunk beds with a bunch of people. But it was still very invasive, I guess. I mean, and there was a lot of meetings that I was required to attend with my caseworker. I had to hand in records of any income that I made and bank accounts to show where that money was going. I had a curfew, couldn't have anybody over. People checked to make sure that I was cleaning up, which, you know, is kind of sucks. Just that they assumed that I wouldn't do that otherwise. And so I think at the time, I only saw, you know, this space that I was just absolutely grateful for. I had a couch to sit on. I had, you know, a place for Mia and me, and we felt safe in that environment. But looking back, especially when I was writing the book, I was just like, wow, that was kind of not great. Like, because I can't imagine having to, in the book I said it was a lot like being on probation. Only, you know, it was just that I didn't have any money.
Oh, geez. Well, what brings you joy these days, Mia? I mean, Stephanie, I'm sure Mia, I was thinking Mia probably brings you a lot of joy.
Imagine.
Well, she is almost 13. So she has her moments. But no, she's great. She brings, it's really been interesting to watch her grow up. I think because I expected to do a lot of damage control, I guess, you know, like I thought, you know, I'd be paying for therapy until, like, one of my friends jokes, like, why save up for college, just save up for therapy. And so I kind of thought, I don't know, that she would be acting out a lot more through the years. But she has turned into, or she has always been, I guess, one of the smartest kids I have ever known, which says a lot because I used to work at a Montessori school for a couple of years. And she's just so aware, and she's very self-aware. She is incredibly empathetic, but she is also one of the most stubborn humans I have ever met, and very, very willful. And so there is kind of the joy of seeing her grow up and see what she's going to accomplish. And I don't know, other things that give me joy. I have the other daughter, Coraline, who's 5, and she's constantly singing and dancing as well. And then I have a stepdaughter who's 15, and I recently got to take her with me. I taught a workshop in Portland with Pam Houston, and Madison came with me for the workshop, and that was pretty great. So, and then, you know, my husband's tall, dark, and handsome, so that's nice.
That's funny. You we're sharing about your story, and you want to, you know, you're excited about the Netflix pieces and stuff to be able to share others people's story. But I will say, I think that you know, there's the saying that we're all 3 bad decisions away from being homeless. And so I do think that it's really cool for you to be sharing your story and kind of your triumphs, the perseverance and all those things. It really is, you know, kind of, you're the heroine, which you probably don't feel like, but I think that it's very important for your story to get out there too, because especially in this environment with unemployment, what's happening with unemployment and all those things, I think these challenges are going to continue to be very real for people as we move through the next, you know, 12 to 24 months for sure.
I think so. I'm a little bit curious, Stephanie, what are your plans? Are you continuing to write, I'm going to guess? Are you doing some freelance? Are you working on another book? Kind of, what does that look like for you?
Well, right now I'm doing a lot of nothing. We're trying to buy a house in Missoula, and it's a process. There's a lot of drama. So I'm kind of stalled. housing insecurity is very triggering for me, as you might imagine. So I just need us to get into a house and a place, and then I'll be able to focus on other things. But when the pandemic started, I started freelancing again, because I lost all of my speaking gigs. So I had to have some kind of income coming in. And so I have been doing that, and will continue to do that. And just because, you know, these things that I had been talking about for 5 years, suddenly everybody's talking about it. And it's like, oh, they're finally realizing there's millions of people working paycheck to paycheck with no sick pay. And so that part of it has been kind of exciting, just to watch the conversations that are happening, and to try and stay in front of the news cycle, which is kind of impossible these days. Right now, I'm just trying to keep up with watching the news cycle. And I do have another project that I am very much thinking about, and sometimes working on. It's going to focus on working homeless families. So that is on the shelf, and sometimes I take it down and look at it.
That sounds like a very good project.
Yes, I have consumed just about every word you've written that I can get my hands on, because your perspective has really changed the way that I look at poverty. And I think it is incredibly important for people to start looking at it now, as you mentioned, 5 years later, to start looking at these things the way that you do. So I just want to thank you so much for joining us in this unconventional format today, Stephanie. It is so great to hear from you, and I cannot wait to hear more.
Well, thank you.